Kelly, I kind of want to start with you because I thought you gave an incredible performance in this movie. Like, so good. I've loved you in everything I've seen you in, and I can't wait for the wedding banquet. But this was just such a complicated character with so many different sides to her. I was so fascinated by it. I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit kind of about what about this project stood out to you and kind of what you were most excited to explore about Val, when you were like reading the script for the first time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. Um, I think the thing that was most interesting to me was this duality that existed within her identity, where she was presenting this part of herself, this very much polished, perfect seeming part of herself, and inside she was really broken. And I think that that is really true to life. I mean, um, I've met so many people who kind of share those tendencies. And I was really excited to explore that.
Mm. Sure, sure. And it's fascinating to watch just to see how it all plays out because this one I can never figure out where it was going. So I was all in for
Hell
the
yeah.
whole way.
It's all
Yeah.
Shal. It's all Shal.
And Shell, I know that this movie Control Freak started as a short you made, just Control for Hulu, a couple years ago. I'm wondering if you can just tell me kind of a little bit about that process of going from short to feature film. Did you always kind of have this idea in the back of your mind when you were working on the short back then?
Well, I knew like my manager, Trent, brought the project to me initially and was like, Hulu's doing these horror shorts. They're really cool. They turned some of them into features. You should make one. So that was always sort of the goal. And, thank goodness it all worked out like that. But when I made the short, I had sort of a vague idea of where the feature was going to go, but I hadn't written it out. It wasn't like a concept piece either. It was a short in and of itself. And then once I pitched the feature, it actually ended up going through a lot of different iterations. A lot of them just not quite hitting the personal note. And similar to what, I thought it was in the last interview Kelly was saying, it was sort of when I found a more personal angle into the story that it really started to work as a feature. Before that, it was a little bit too, I guess, technical or like not as, it didn't have as much of part of me and my history in it as much. I think once that component was in it, it worked a lot better as a feature. But it's funny to see like all the different directions the film could have gone. You know what I mean? From other scripts, from different versions of it. It was very different before. And my wife actually had a lot of great ideas. But
Mhm.
one of the most iconic scenes was actually like me talking to her, and she's like, "Oh, well, what if she did this?" And I was like, "Oh, that's fucked up. Let's put that in." So
Sure.
shout out to the wife for being brilliant.
No, absolutely. That's so interesting. I love that. Miles, I've seen you kind of operate in the space of psychological horror before with Daniel Isn't Real, and I love that movie. I love that
Oh,
movie
thank
so
you.
much. I've seen it
Oh,
so
thank
many
you.
times now.
Oh, my God, thanks.
But I'm just kind of curious. I mean, they're very different movies and you're playing very different characters, but I'm kind of just curious what the like harder acting challenge is. Is it like Daniel Isn't Real where you're the guy who's like going through all the shit? Or is it in Control Freak where you're the partner, you don't totally understand what's happening, but one day you wake up and you're tied to the bed and kind of have
Yeah.
to react to that. What's kind of harder to do?
I think it's definitely harder to be covered in the goo. I think that's the hardest. It's one of the hardest things you can do in acting is when you get the goo all over you. I think that my I was actually very specifically drawing on Daniel Isn't Real for this in the sense that I knew what it was like to perform that kind of slow descent into madness. And so I had a perspective that I could offer to Kelly, I guess. I wanted to be a support system because I knew how hard that was. And it's hard as an actor, but it's also just hard physically, and it's rough. It to be all the sticky blood and everything. It's a fun part of making a movie. I think having movie magic stuff happen, but at a certain point, it is physically draining and it's really difficult and it's emotionally very draining to have to go to that place all the time. So I just felt blessed to have some perspective to know how to then be supportive of Kelly as she went through that, which is just, inarguably a more difficult job to do. So I definitely was happy that I had that experience so that I knew how I could be a helpful scene partner and coworker as she went through a very difficult time herself. So kudos again to Kelly. She did such a great job with this, and I know how hard it is, and I'm so happy that she did such a good job, and the result is in the film. So yeah.
Dude, Miles is the best. I mean, clearly you can tell from this interview, but
Oh, thanks, Kelly.
I honestly could not have done this without his like support and guidance and just like openness. And it was such a joy to just be in his atmosphere. So
I think you could have done it without me.
I don't think so.
I
You're right.
appreciate it, but you could.
Either way, I love just kind of watching that chemistry between you guys' characters and how that relationship changes over the movie. It was, again, I was just so interested, couldn't figure any of it out, but loved it. Shal, I also kind of wanted to ask you about some of the nightmare sequences in this movie, because there's horror movies that can be a lot of like dream sequences, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But here, they factor into the story, and they're scary as hell. Like the one with the ants coming out of her mouth, that was too much for me. That freaked me out. But I'm just kind of wondering if you can kind of tell me how you kind of or what you think the key or the secret to making like a really good dream nightmare sequence in a horror movie like this is.
I don't know. I mean, you need like an insanely good actor, first of all. So we got that covered. Like that sequence was, it wasn't that our second day or something, Kelly? You were just like, I think we shot that. I think that was
Yeah,
our
that
second
was
day
like,
on set, or maybe the
yeah,
first day even. And Kelly
yeah.
just like falls onto the floor and you're like coughing. That was when like I knew it was gonna work. Basically, that take, I was like, holy shit, this is fucking sick. I don't know what a good dream, how to really what makes a good dream sequence, to be honest. For me, it's like I want there to be some sort of internal logic to what's happening. And I want there to just be like a rising sense of just, I don't know, sort of like a subconscious dread aspect that happens. So, I mean, for that one in particular, I was just thinking, I have a very vivid memory of like when a beetle was like crawling inside of my pants, like up my thigh when I was like 12 or something. I just felt this, well, I didn't believe it at first, like low on my leg. And then I felt it close and I was like, and then I like squished it and it was like a big bug inside my pants. And I just think there's something just so terrible about something crawling over you. And then it's like, well, where can that go from there? And if you can sort of just release your imagination to get it a little bit strange and then hope that you have like, yeah, basically like the performer, the footage, and then the VFX to pull it off. That was another thing too. Like we didn't really, that was one of the shots we didn't see till very late in the process. And I think Travis Button and Hyphenate that worked in the VFX really just did like really brought that to life. You know, we storyboarded everything out on this film like very specifically, so I knew like what I wanted it to look like. But I'm really glad that the final result like ended up looking that good.